Don't move a muscle. This car looks a little too nice for someone like you. The officer's voice slices through the humid night, sharp as steel. His gloved hand hovers over the evidence, trembling slightly as cameras flare in the darkness. Phones lift, capturing every heartbeat. The murmuring crowd bends forward, curiosity and tension palpable. Officer Marshall's jaw locks, his glare fierce. "You tell me," he growls, stepping closer. "Why would a man like you have this under the seat?" Jalen Cross stays calm, his shoulders unshaken, his eyes steady. "Maybe you should check who the car belongs to before you decide who I am," he says softly, deliberately. Time stretches. Neon reflections dance across chrome rims. Even the hum of the distant siren seems to hold its breath. The narrator fades in, gentle but precise. "Have you ever watched someone's dignity get tested in public? Tonight, they'll see what truth looks like when it refuses to back down." Thursday night in Crestwood. Restaurants spill laughter into the sidewalks, where cornbread crumbs meet designer heels. A place where wealth and memory collide. New buildings glitter beside old brick, like someone taped a magazine cover over reality. Jalen Cross had just left Hearth and Vine, a restaurant so expensive the menus don't print numbers, only tasting notes. He wore a tailored charcoal blazer and quiet confidence, the kind you can't buy. He'd been celebrating something personal, something earned. He walked to his car with a relaxed purpose, breathing in jasmine that clung to the evening breeze. And then the red and blue whirlpool, the shout, the shove. Officer Marshall didn't ask, he assumed. Phones recorded, whispers sharpened into murmurs. "That's messed up. Bro probably stole that car. Look at that suit, though." Marshall shifted his weight like a man chewing victory already. He opened the passenger door, rummaged with rehearsed certainty, then held up a small bag of white powder between pinched gloves. "There it is," he announced, loud enough for every lens. Gasps. A mother covered her child's eyes as if guilt were contagious. Jalen swallowed, voice calm, but ironed flat. "That is not mine. I don't do any of that. I don't even drink." "Save it," Marshall snapped. "These folks saw your attitude. I've seen this routine hundreds of times." A whisper. "Just another one." But there were hints, small sparkling edges the crowd missed. The sedan's chrome rims bore a discreet crest. A leather portfolio sat on the dashboard embossed with gold letters, and the way Jalen breathed, measured, anchored. Not the inhale of someone caught, but someone preparing. Another officer approached. Officer Ruiz, younger, quieter. "Found this under his seat, Ruiz. Bag sealed, looks fresh." Marshall smirked. Ruiz frowned, eyes scanning Jalen's face. "Sir, do you know why this is happening?" he asked. Jalen's voice carried dignity beyond its volume. "I know the difference between suspicion and projection. I also know the law," Marshall scoffed. "The only law you'll see tonight is the inside of a holding room." The crowd murmured agreement, mixed with doubt. Jalen took a slow breath and said words that changed the wind. "Before you cuff me, I'd like to make one call to my employer." Marshall waved dismissively. "You can call whoever after booking." "No," Jalen replied softly, eyes never leaving his. "This cannot wait." Ruiz hesitated. Something in Jalen's posture whispered power. Marshall weighed ego against reason and chose ego. "You have 30 seconds." Jalen dialed. "Hello? Yes, it's me. I'm being detained. Could you send someone immediately?" He ended the call without explaining. The crowd buzzed. Marshall smirked again, thinking he'd just watched a last-ditch bluff. But above the rooftops, something thundered, a shifting in the city's spine. The turning point had arrived, and Marshall didn't feel it. 5 years earlier, Jalen Cross wasn't wearing a blazer. He wore scrubs and exhaustion. He worked night shifts in a community clinic that smelled like bleach and old hope. He saw everything: broken systems, ignored neighborhoods, fractured trust. Patients whispered their fears to him because his eyes didn't judge. But one evening, his mother arrived, trembling, hands shaking, voice stuttering as she clutched a citation, written by none other than Officer Marshall. Parking violation, they called it. But she was parked legally. Marshall insisted she fit the description. She couldn't prove innocence then. Tears fell because dignity had been taxed again. Jalen remembered that feeling, the heat of helplessness. That night he vowed, never again. He studied harder, climbed higher, received scholarships no one expected, earned degrees people doubted, and eventually he launched a project, Urban Trust, a legal advocacy foundation for wrongfully cited residents. Millions of dollars in grants, national recognition, board meetings in mirrored towers, his name inked across reform documents. Marshall didn't know, didn't care to know. Present day. Minutes after Jalen's phone call, a black SUV rolled up like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence. Doors opened, suits poured out. The crowd parted, whispering as if royalty walked through. A woman stepped forward, Evelyn Hart, attorney, head head of Urban Trust's legal division. Her voice carved through tension. "Officers, step away from Mr. Cross." Marshall blinked. "I'm in the middle of—" "No," she interrupted, eyes cold steel. "You're in the middle of planting evidence, and you are being recorded. Those bags were handled without proper procedure. Chain of custody compromised." Phones zoomed in. Ruiz swallowed hard. "I didn't see where the bag came from," Marshall snapped. "Don't turn on me," Evelyn continued. "We've had complaints against you. Patterns. Tonight, you crossed into the wrong life." Jalen stayed calm, voice like a quiet river. "I told you this was a mistake." Marshall's face twitched, ego cracking. "You think because you have a nice car and a lawyer you can talk down to us?" Evelyn replied, "No, he can talk to us. Something you've never done to him." Crowd murmurs became thunder. A local reporter happened to be nearby. Microphone already raised. "Mr. Cross, care to comment?" Jalen inhaled, a measured breath he'd been saving for years. "Yes, and I'll do so when the city is listening." Marshall's eyes darted. He suddenly looked smaller. Sirens echoed, not to arrest, but to investigate. A white-collar precinct supervisor arrived, clipboard in hand, voice calm but cutting. "We've been monitoring complaints about evidence handling," she announced. "Officer Marshall, please step aside." Marshall sputtered. "This man had drugs in his car. Where are your gloves?" she asked. He froze. "You touched the evidence barehanded," she continued. "Chain of custody is invalid. Also, we have body cam discrepancies." Crowd gasped. Ruiz stepped forward, reluctant but honest. "I saw Officer Marshall enter the car before finding anything. It felt unusual." The supervisor nodded slowly. "Thank you, Officer Ruiz. Integrity matters." Marshall's face flushed crimson. He whispered, "You don't understand. People like him—" Jalen interjected softly. "Finish that sentence, please." Marshall's throat tightened. Words died there. Phones captured everything. Evelyn lifted a file. "This is the 4th complaint this month. Same pattern, same demographic. Tonight, we're filing formal charges." Gasps. A woman whispered, "Finally!" Marshall's hands trembled. The arrogance had drained, leaving only fear. Jalen didn't smirk. He didn't cheer. He simply said, "I refuse to let your prejudice define my presence here." The supervisor nodded at the crowd. "This incident will be reviewed publicly." Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. And then, a news alert pinged on countless phones. Urban Trust CEO detained in alleged planting incident. The crowd's reaction shifted from suspicion to outrage. "That's the Urban Trust guy? He's been helping the community. This is messed up." Ruiz stepped toward Jalen, voice quieter. "I'm sorry, sir." Jalen nodded. "Accountability starts here." Marshall's shoulders sagged. Without force, without cuffs, only the weight of consequences. 2 weeks later, City Hall overflowed. A public hearing. Marshall stood before a review board, eyes hollow. Evidence stacked higher than pride. Witnesses spoke, policies updated, training mandated. And Jalen? He sat calmly in the front row, not as a victim, but as a leader. When the council chair asked if he'd like to speak, he rose slowly. "I don't seek revenge," he said. "I seek reform. I want a city where dignity isn't a luxury, where questioning someone isn't an assumption, just a conversation." Applause rippled through the chamber. Not explosive, respectful. Marshall was suspended pending investigation, told to reflect, not patrol. Outside, reporters swarmed. "Mr. Cross, how do you feel now that justice is served?" He answered with a glance toward a mother holding her son's hand. "Justice is never served. It's maintained. We keep it alive, one encounter at a time." That night, Jalen drove home in silence. The same sedan, the same crest, glinting. But something was different. Not the car, people's eyes. Where suspicion once brewed, recognition simmered. Back at Urban Trust headquarters, Evelyn handed Jalen a folder. "New policies approved. The city wants to partner." Jalen smiled, tired, grateful. "Good. Let's build something that outlives us." And as he stepped into the elevator, the narrator whispered, "Sometimes the quietest voice becomes the loudest lesson. Sometimes dignity isn't defended with fists, but with truth. And when the world finally listens, arrogance falls like old paint. The screen fades to black. This is Black Twisted Stories.